everyone, and welcome to today's live Q&A, Ask CABA Know Your Networks. It's 12:30, so we'll make a start. I understand that we do still have people joining us. Hopefully, you should now be able to see us on your screens as well as our slides. Today's Q&A we have scheduled to last approximately an hour. There will be opportunities to ask questions as we go along the way, and I will tell you a little bit more shortly as to how you can do that. My name is, we've just gone a little bit out of focus, first technical glitch. So my name is Samantha Banks, and I am a senior career coach with Renovo. I will actually be facilitating today's live question and answer session. And this is obviously in association with CABA's LifeWorks campaign. I'm also joined by my colleague Louise, who is another senior career coach at Renovo. So the format for today's session will be that we'll start off by telling you a little bit about who Renovo are as an organisation, and a little bit of background about us as well. I'll then demonstrate for you how you can interact with us throughout the session, so how you can ask questions as we go along the way. We'll then start taking your questions, and we've already had some brilliant questions that have come through, haven't we? So we can start off with those, and please feel free to keep your questions coming as we go throughout the session. Now, just to start off by giving you a little bit of background as to who Renovo are, we are one of the UK's leading providers of career transition and job search support. We've been working very, very closely with CABA over the last few years in order to provide career support. We provide really powerful, tailored and flexible one-to-one support that's made up of a couple of different avenues that I'll talk to you a little bit about towards the end of the session, just so you know a little bit more about potentially what might be available to you. But we have a really, really strong track record of supporting people across all different levels, from administrator through to executive level, across a wide range of different functions. But as I mentioned before, specifically, we've done a lot of work within the accountancy and finance remit, working very, very closely with CABA in order to do so. We've actually in total supported over 35,000 people back into work over the last 5 years. Now, in terms of a little bit of background about us individually, so just to give you an idea about my background, I've worked within the career support and advice remit for Renovo for the last 6 years. And previous to this, my background was actually within accountancy recruitment. Louise has a background within commercial recruitment, but she's actually been with us for 5 years, 5.5 years, yeah. I believe. Yeah, so she's, again, similar to myself, supported people across a wide range of different levels and functions. As a team at Renovo, we are an award-winning team, so we're very proud of that. Louise specifically actually was awarded the Career Coach of the Year by the Career Development Institute in 2013. So we'll just now sort of go on to demonstrating how you can ask questions throughout the presentation. So hopefully you should be able to see our slides on the screen, but Louise will explain how you can interact with us.
Excellent, thank you, Sam. So yeah, just before we start the presentation, we just want to ensure that you can hear us, because the main way that you will be sending questions to us today will be through using the question panel. So first of all, just to ensure that you can all hear us and you can hear all aspects of the presentation, if you can see on the right hand side of the screen, you should see that you've got a control panel. And if the control panel isn't already open, if you can just open it by clicking on the small red box, and you should see that you've got a white arrow in it. And once you've actually opened that question box, if you can just type in either hello Sam or hello Samantha or hello Louise, just to confirm that you can hear us. So I'll just give you some time to respond. As Sam mentioned, we've had lots of questions that have come through already. We've got a lot of people registered today. So if you can just take a few moments to do that for me, that would be great. In order for you to interact with us throughout today's session, the question panel is going to be the main way that you will communicate through the webinar. Now, all attendees are muted, and the reason why you are muted is if you can imagine, if we've got over 150 people registered on a webinar and everyone's got lots of questions, obviously it would probably be quite a long webinar and nobody could hear each other. So what we've chosen to do today is to mute everybody, to use the question panel so you can type your questions. It will also obviously give you an element of confidentiality as well with regards to your questions. You can post those on the question panel, and then we will be answering those questions throughout today's webinar. Now, for those people who are already on social media and are using the likes of Twitter, don't forget you can actually use your Twitter account and you can actually ask questions, and you would need to use the hashtag #AskCABA. Okay, so we will do our best to answer as many questions as possible. As Sam mentioned earlier, we've had so many questions through already, and we'll be working our way through as many of those as possible. However, if we do run out of the time today, because I know we've only got an hour for today's webinar, and if we don't answer your question, don't worry. The questions that we didn't answer, the answers will be posted on the CABA website. Now, it's really important because we are going to be providing you with lots of information. If you haven't got a pen and a piece of paper to hand, go and grab one now. We've got lots of really useful hints and tips today, so making some notes today is going to be really important as well. There's lots of advice and guidance that we are going to be covering, which will be possibly relevant to your own circumstances as well. We're also hoping that we're going to be having a recorded version of today's webinar as well, which hopefully will be made accessible to you afterwards as well. This will then, if it is set up for you, that it will be accessed on the CABA website.
Just one thing to add to that is hopefully you should all be able to, as well as hear us, you should hopefully be able to see us on the video as well. Now, depending on your settings on your computer or PC or what device you're watching us on, there'll be different ways that you'll be able to adjust the size of the screen. So I'm aware that for some people the webcam part, the video feed might be quite small and the screen might be quite large, but it should be, if you scroll your mouse over one of the parts that you can see, you'll see that there's two arrows that come up in the corner of the screen. If you click on that, that will alternate for you whether you prefer to see us or the slides in larger detail.
Okay, so as I mentioned, we've had so many questions that have come through already. Today's webinar is very much about using your network. So it may be that you've not already thought about some questions that you'd like to ask us. So just to give you a few ideas with regards to asking career-related questions that potentially are very much in and around your current situation related to networking, here are a few tips with regards to some of the things that you may want to be thinking about. These are the areas, obviously, that we can be answering you around. We've had questions in already, which will certainly be touching on some of these areas, but we're going to be talking to you about the different ways that you can use social media as part of your job searching, but also most relevantly with your networking. We'll also be focusing then on LinkedIn. We've had a couple of questions specific to LinkedIn that have come in so far, which we'll be answering around those. We get a lot of questions with regards to LinkedIn and how you can make sure that you are visible on LinkedIn. So we're going to be spending some time answering questions around LinkedIn profiles. It may be that you've got questions around how to expand your network, or you may have heard that term, that hidden job market, and how can I access the hidden job market? We've already had some questions around accessing the hidden job market in already, so we'll certainly be touching on that as well. So if you've got any career-related questions with regards to networking, then again, use the control panel. That's how you will be communicating with us, and we'll do our best to answer as many questions as possible. But as previously mentioned, any questions that we don't get a chance to answer today, we will be posting those, or they will be posted on the CABA website for you.
Okay, good. So should we make a start?
Excellent. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, so having a look at the questions that, just jump back a slide, having a look at the questions that we've had that come through. I think there's one that's actually, was one of the first questions that we got that I think is actually a really good place for us to start. So I can see that the video feed has gone a little bit blurry. It's trying to adjust itself. Okay, so the question that we've got, do you want to have a go at, do you want to answer this one, Louise?
It depends what the question is.
Yeah. So the first question that we've had is, and it's a really, really good one, is that people have told me that I need to network, but I have no idea actually what that means. How do I network?
Okay. Well, I think first of all, that phrase networking, I don't know about you, but when I first heard that term networking, it scared me to death, because I think immediately it brings the impression very formal, very professional. But just to give you the definition of networking is very much around making connections and exchanging information. So that can be taken so broadly. So networking is very much about you getting in contact and talking to people and exchanging information to make more people know that you are going to be available for employment. So it isn't necessarily about going out there and asking for a job. It's more about exchanging information and connecting with people. So that could be people that you currently know. So it might be people that you professionally know that you possibly have worked with in the past. It may be new people that potentially you could meet in a more social environment as well. But the definition of networking is very much about talking and meeting and sharing information and making people know that you are available for opportunities. And that could be so broad, but certainly if you are job searching, that's really the term that you'll hear a lot.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's, you touched on a really good point, in that networking doesn't have to be that you're directly going to people and asking for a job, or that you're being very forward with it. Actually, it's simply about having conversations with people, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just on the conversation as well, when people say that you do need to network, it might just be a case of just talking to people and making them aware that you're available for employment opportunities. It could be that you've got friends, family members, ex-colleagues that actually don't know that you're looking for work at this moment in time. So it's very much about having conversations with all different groups of people, regardless of the circumstances, and that's what the term networking means.
There's a question actually that I get asked quite often that hasn't come through, interestingly, on this, but people quite often ask, why is networking important? So what would you say, do you think, is the reason for that?
I think networking is really important, first of all, because when you're actually talking to people, you're there, you've got that presence. And I think we're going to be talking about online presence later on, because networking isn't just about that face-to-face, it's also about remote networking as well. But yes, it is really important, because it's obviously going to be the first impressions will count. So obviously the first time that somebody meets with you, it will create that first impression, and it's very much about building that relationship and that rapport with that individual. About 70% of jobs in today's job market are actually, a lot of people achieve their desired role and their next outcome by achieving roles by networking, and that's what we call the accessing the hidden job market. So 70% of jobs aren't actually being advertised online. Only 30% of jobs are being advertised online. 70% of those have actually been made up of people networking, targeting people, targeting organisations, using social media as well. So it is so important in today's job market that you should be talking to people and networking.
And I think sort of particularly if you're, I would agree, particularly if you're in the instance where you're finding that you're not getting much back from people such as recruitment consultants. We've gone blurry again, that should adjust itself shortly. So particularly if you find that you're not getting much back from recruitment consultants, or if you find that you have obstacles in looking for a new opportunity, so for example such as a career break, or that you're looking for a career change. Because obviously for an organisation to use a recruitment agency, that costs them quite a significant amount of money. So you tend to find if people are using recruitment agencies, then it's looking for a very specific skill set, and they will look at people only with that skill set. But also it takes organisations, it's a really time-consuming process, and those of you who have recruited for people before will know this. It's a really time-consuming process to recruit for people in the traditional way. So why wouldn't you look at people who you've got recommendations about from people that you trust? So there's lots of different reasons as to why that can be a really crucial part of the process, and networking works across all different levels as well. So whether you're an administrator right through to a chief executive or a CFO, then across all levels we've seen where it can be really, really crucial to finding a new position. And even if it's not necessarily finding the people that you're speaking to directly give you opportunities. It might just be that they give you a lead of a job that you've not seen, or it might just be that they know someone that works for an organisation that you really want to work for. So there's lots of different ways and lots of different things that you can get out of your network, which hopefully we'll talk a little bit more about as we answer some of the other questions that have come through.
Sam, I've just noticed we've actually had a question that's come in from Mark with regards to recruitment agencies, and given the fact that you just touched on agencies, it might be quite useful just to refer to that question now. So Mark basically sent a question over with regards to choosing recruitment agencies and how best to use recruitment agencies, which ones to choose. So I think firstly, based on what Sam said so far, use your network. Do you know anybody who has used a recruitment agency that have got a really strong reputation that has helped them in the past? Because certainly if you go and reach out to a recruitment agency and say, I've been recommended your services through this particular person, the immediate reaction will be, well, if I've helped them before, I'm going to be able to help you. So first of all, use your network to identify recruitment agencies within your area. Another thing that you might want to do, Mark, as well is think about with recruitment agencies, as Sam rightly mentioned, recruitment agencies can be fantastic, but obviously it's a cost to the employer, not yourself, the employee. It's a cost to the employer to use them. So they are only going to be able to help you find opportunities based on your most recent experience. So if you're looking for a career change, if you're looking to maybe go into a more lower level role, or maybe possibly more senior level role, they may not be able to help you as effectively as you'd like them to. They'll possibly be looking at your most recent experience and looking for like roles. So best way to choose them: speak to your network, find out anybody who has used them in the area, and think about who you're currently working for or previous employees. Who did they use? Because if they've placed people in similar roles, there's a high chance they've got a reputation for actually placing very similar people. It might be that you want to have a look online. Google's fantastic just for actually identifying recruitment agencies in the area. There is an online directory called Agency Central, which will help you to identify recruitment agencies by location and also by specialism. But most importantly, look on their own website. If they advertise roles that potentially would be of an interest to you, then those are the types of agencies that you may want to approach.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. Okay. All right. So next question. This is one that's just come through actually from Chris, saying, and again, this is a really good point. Should I be selective or go out to as many possible network contacts as I can? So I think what Chris is saying is, should I just let everyone that I know that I'm looking, or contact everyone I know, or should I be more selective in that?
Okay. Well, first of all, I think with any form of networking, whether you are talking to a group of people en masse, or it might be that you've identified organisations that you may want to target directly with your CV, and I'm sure we'll probably touch on that in a little bit more detail later. But regardless of whatever your approach is, you do want to be selective, and you may want to actually start prioritising who you'd like to talk to first. Now, Chris, dependent on your network, if you've got over 500 connections, there's obviously a lot of people that you need to get through. So rather than just sending out a blank canvas to absolutely everybody to say, this is what I'm looking for, can you help me? What about making it a little bit more specific, a little bit more individualized? It will become, first of all, more personal, and you'll also find that you'll get a lot more back from it as well. So from those lists of contacts that potentially you want to contact, start putting it into an order. What about your hot contacts? Those people that are those key decision makers in the organisation, the people that you would go to, and actually they've got a level of authority that could help you with that next role. It might be the second group of people could be able to put you in touch with somebody that is a decision maker within the organisation. And that third group of people may just be somebody initially to do some research and just to do a little bit more questioning around. Regardless of whatever your approach you go for, that the main thing is to not ask for a job. Most people I tend to work with really aren't too sure, what do I actually say? Do I just go up and say, can you give me a job? Which I can imagine that if all of a sudden you've asked that question and they haven't got a job, where does the conversation go from there?
Yeah, I think that the best thing to relate that to is if you imagine that you're at a networking event and someone that you haven't spoken to for 10 years comes up to you, says, hi, how are you? Do you have a job for me? Think about how that would make you feel, and potentially the answer ultimately potentially is going to be no. And if you think that that's all that person's going to want to talk to you about in the future, how likely are you to start a conversation with them later on in the networking event? So I think the best thing to do is relate it to a real life scenario.
Absolutely.
But so when you take that sort of away from a face-to-face networking event, the same context still applies. So it's very much about information, isn't it?
Absolutely. And if somebody came up to you and said, I'm sure, Sam, if I came up to you and I said, Sam, can I just get some advice from you? If I was asking you for some advice and guidance, I'd hope that you'd find that quite flattering.
Oh, definitely. Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
And if you imagine if somebody came up and said, oh, can I just get some advice? You are seen as being that expert. So rather than asking for a job, ask somebody, can I get some advice and guidance? You're currently working for this organisation. And I've done some research. They sound a fantastic organisation. I've looked at the values, their mission statement. I'm really looking at enhancing my career and really moving forward and ideally working for an organisation like the company that you're working for. If you've got any advice or guidance that you could give me, now you're indirectly saying I'm looking for a job without actually saying can you give me one. But it's a really nice soft approach. It's not going to make the other person feel uncomfortable, but also it's a conversation starter. So back to that definition of networking, it's an exchange of information. It's about communicating. It's about building relationships and really talking to people more than anything.
Definitely. That's opportunities are attached to people, aren't they? So
absolutely.
It's not as much as everything is sort of promoted to be online, it still comes down to good old-fashioned conversations. So it might be that you initially try and make contact with people online as a starting point, or if you feel a little bit less confident around it, LinkedIn can be a great way to do that, which I'm sure I've already seen we've got some really good questions about LinkedIn, so we'll come back to that. So it might be that you start off online, or that you drop them an email with the view that you're maybe arrange a meeting, would you say, or a telephone call if it's a little bit harder to get to, because you get so much more out of that than what you would do maybe just out of an email exchange.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's all about knowing that person that you're contacting. So it could be that when you are approaching those really hot contacts, you know that person, you know that person on a face-to-face basis, that you initially have a conversation with them over the telephone because you feel really confident in actually picking up the phone and making that contact with them. For those people that potentially that you don't know that maybe you'd like to reach out to, it might be more initially that you would approach them more online through an email or through a letter, or that approach as well.
Good. Okay. Anything else that you want to add to that before we move on to the next one?
We've got so many questions, so I'm conscious we've got a lot to get through.
Okay. All right. So, I mean, since we mentioned LinkedIn, it makes sense to go to some of the questions about LinkedIn then. So just before we do that, actually, I have a poll that I just want to launch on your screen now. So hopefully you should be able to see this on your page. So it's just asking whether or not you have a LinkedIn profile and what you've done with it, really. So you've got some options. You've got yes, and it's fully complete. No, not at all. I have a basic profile. And for those of you who haven't heard of LinkedIn, what is LinkedIn? So this is really interesting, actually, looking at these results come in. So I'll share them with you in a second before they come through. It just means that we can make sure when answering the question that we're sort of targeting it towards everyone, really. I'll give you a couple more seconds. There's just a few more people that need to vote for us. Okay, all right. So if we close off that and share those results, hopefully. So it looked really interesting, and this probably ties in actually with a lot of people that we're supporting, doesn't it? So 37% of you have said yes, you have a profile and it's fully complete, but really interestingly, 51% only have a basic LinkedIn profile. If we have a look at then the kind of the first question that we've got that's come through here on LinkedIn, the first question we've got is, should your LinkedIn profile be a reiteration of your CV and a copy and paste? Should it be more or less detail? And actually, there's another question that kind of relates to that that's come through, is what is the importance of having a LinkedIn profile. So I think they all kind of tie in together. Do you want to?
I was just about to say, you are our LinkedIn expert here, Samantha. So why don't you start? I'm sure I can chip in with some further tips.
Right. So I mean, LinkedIn is, in terms of LinkedIn itself as a tool, it is a really, really important part of the job search process. The main reason being that any good recruiter or headhunter will be using LinkedIn as a way to find candidates. So because of that, how you present yourself on your LinkedIn profile is crucial, really, because they're making the decision whether or not to contact you based on what they see on your profile. Now, the other side to that is when a recruiter searches for candidates on LinkedIn, what they will do is they'll search by keywords. So the keywords that they're searching for, the more times that they appear on your profile, the closer to the top of your list, top of their list you will be, sorry. So there are other things that impact a little bit on LinkedIn search results, but keywords is kind of, and how complete your profile is the main thing. So it's not only about making sure that people find you, but it's making sure that people find you in the right searches as well. Now, if you find that your LinkedIn profile, like 51% of you, just has basic information, then it's fairly likely that you will be coming up in searches, but your profile potentially might be on page 3 or page 4 of the list of the recruiter's results. So you need to think about what you can do in terms of the information that you include your profile in order to be able to bump that up. And I'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. But it's not just recruiters that are going to be using LinkedIn to find candidates. Actually, a lot of organisations now have cottoned on to the fact that they can save themselves quite a bit of money by not using recruiters and by using LinkedIn to find people themselves. So a lot of organisations now are using LinkedIn as a way to find candidates. You tend to find that actually, if you're going for an interview, there's a fairly good chance that the hiring manager will look you up on LinkedIn before you go in and see them. So you can see from that actually how you're presenting yourself on LinkedIn is really important. So it's not just about having it so that it tells them everything that you've ever done, because they need to have something then to contact you about to then view on the CV. So your LinkedIn profile needs to have, it's a really fine balance. It needs to be somewhere in between, enough to be able to demonstrate a lot of the keywords, but at the same time not giving everything away. So, for example, there's a few sections in particular that you really, with your LinkedIn profile, that you want to make quite a lot of. So the first of those is actually what I'll do to demonstrate this. I'm just going to jump to my LinkedIn profile. So hopefully you should be able to see that on the screen. I think that's the easiest way. Right, okay. So let's just go to my LinkedIn profile. Hopefully you should, fingers crossed, all be able to see that. Okay, so if we scroll down, now what you have to keep in mind with my profile, mine will be a little bit different to what yours would expect to be, because obviously I'm not searching for an opportunity. So mine is more about a little bit of a cross between what I do and selling out organisation services. But one of the most important parts on your LinkedIn profile is this professional headline you see at the top of the page. So you should be able to hopefully see this that I've just pointed to. Brilliant. So this professional headline that you have here at the top of the page, this is all that initially comes up about you in a LinkedIn search when someone is searching for candidates on LinkedIn. So we see a lot of professional headlines where people have, people just highlight, for example, unemployed or looking for a new opportunity. And that just doesn't work, does it?
Yeah, and also, Sam, when if you have since finished your last role, you will find that will automatically set this headline to default your last position. So that immediately can indicate that you are working if you're not. So touching on what Sam's saying, making sure that you're changing it to reflect what you want to be seen as.
Yeah, absolutely, and that helps to demonstrate that you're coming up in the right sort of searches. So an example of the sort of thing that you might include could be something like experienced finance director with expertise in strategy, finance systems, and change management, for example. So what that does is incorporate some keywords and also demonstrates actually the level to which you want to be found for. Now, there are a lot of other sections on your profile that are really, really important, and so often I see, let me just clear that arrow, and then if we scroll down.
Sam, just while you're scrolling down, because I'm just conscious we've got about 4% of people at the moment that aren't actually on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
This profile that obviously you're showing and you're demonstrating, for those people who aren't on LinkedIn, you will notice that unless Sam's got her work contact details on, again promoting the organisation, that the aim of LinkedIn is that people will actually communicate with you through LinkedIn. So you don't need to put things like your address or your phone numbers on like you would do with a CV. So if privacy is an issue, because I know a lot of people, it's a main concern we have with a lot of people, that if you're not on LinkedIn, I'm sure you've possibly thought about, if not already, you know, how private is the information on here, and you are in complete control of what you want to have on LinkedIn. So you'll see when obviously Sam's going through her profile, there isn't any reference on there of any personal contact details, so it's a purely safe site that you can use.
Definitely, yeah. I guess the other thing to highlight is the contact details that are visible are only visible to people that you choose to make them visible to. So your connection, so your email address, if you choose to, you can have that visible to people that you've already accepted as a connection.
Okay.
Okay, so the other sections to keep in mind, kind of the really important sections, just sort of bearing in mind how much time we have to talk through this, because I could sit and talk about this for hours quite easily. But the main section is the summary. So this summary acts very similar to, it's an introduction to your profile, and so often I see LinkedIn profiles where people leave this blank, whereas actually this is the most important part, or one of the most important parts. It's a really valuable keyword space, so you want to make sure that you're incorporating keywords that relate to the industry and sector and the level of role that you're looking for. You need to make sure it gives a reflection of what you do, and it needs to be easy to read ultimately. And then the other sections to really take note of are your experience. So you really want to make sure that you've got detail underneath each of your roles. Like I said before, not the same amount of detail that's on your CV, but it can be really useful to have maybe a brief introductory paragraph followed by some key bullet points, or a couple of three or four key achievements, would you say, maybe?
Yeah, definitely.
And that then allows you to be able to drop in some of those keywords that people are going to be looking for. So those are probably the two, the kind of the main parts to point out on LinkedIn. There is a lot more to LinkedIn in terms of what you can and can't put on your profile, but there'll be different sections that will be more relevant depending on you as an individual and what you're looking at doing. But I think the other thing to remember is it's not just about your LinkedIn profile, it's about actually what you do with it, isn't it? So I mean, that kind of leads on nicely to another question that we've had, in that someone has asked, how do people actually find a job through LinkedIn? So there's lots of different ways that people do that, and it's all about how active they are on it. So do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the most obvious place to start would be to actually look for jobs on LinkedIn. So if you wanted to actually see what live vacancies were currently being advertised, what better place than to actually start is actually going to the job section. The great thing about this, because another question we've had in has come in about, you know, who actually uses LinkedIn. And Sam very rightly mentioned that there are companies, Microsoft, IBM, ASOS, over the last few years, they've saved thousands of pounds on recruitment agency fees by actually advertising vacancies on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is fantastic because not only can you connect with people on LinkedIn, but you can search for jobs. And a lot of those jobs posted on LinkedIn are through companies directly. So again, it bypasses those recruitment agencies, which obviously can be quite a costly part of the recruiting process. So Sam's just actually LinkedIn now and just giving you an idea. The great thing that you will find with LinkedIn as well, when you actually look for jobs on LinkedIn, it will give you an indication whether you actually know anybody who's in your network within that organisation, or who has a connection to that person. So you can search for jobs just by doing the keyword search, as you'll see on the left hand side of the screen. Putting in those keywords, you can put the filters on there as well, and then it will bring up a list of results. Once you've identified which job may be of an interest to you, it's just a case of just clicking onto the job title, And then when you click onto the job title itself, it will take you through to the next page. So Hayes, for example, are recruiting on LinkedIn. So it's not just employers, it's recruitment agencies as well who are using LinkedIn to advertise jobs. It will give you an overview of the job itself. And then when you scroll further down, the great thing again as well with LinkedIn, it's not just going to find this job, but it's also going to make recommendations. On the right-hand side of the page, it will tell you other roles that people have also viewed, positions that you may want to actually apply for further down on the screen as well. So lots of really useful tips with regards to job searching. Another thing that you will find as well with regards to LinkedIn is you can actually search for vacancies in the group section, which we will actually come up to. Just before we do though, I've had a question about job searching on LinkedIn, which will probably be worth us having a quick look at.
Yeah, so there's Andy has actually asked, the problem with LinkedIn vacancies is they never seem to show salaries. So you would have noticed on LinkedIn that you have the option of having the basic account or the upgraded account, the premium account. They will only show salaries if you're on the premium account, unfortunately, which is a shame. It can be a little bit frustrating, but I think depending on the title of the role that you're looking for, then potentially that could be a bit of a gauge. What you could also do is find the vacancy on LinkedIn and then go and see if you can find it somewhere else, because in all likelihood it will have a salary written somewhere else. And if it doesn't, then that indicates that actually maybe they're quite flexible on salary. And this is where having a conversation with someone comes into it, really. So if you can identify the name of the organisation that's advertising, or if it's being advertised by a recruitment agency, even in the reactive part to your job search, so what you're doing here is reacting to a vacancy, you can still network or have a conversation with someone. So what you can do there, particularly if it's through a recruitment agency, you can talk to them about what the role is, what the salary is potentially, and whether it might be relevant for you. And then that means that potentially for any future vacancies they might have, they'll keep you in mind.
And I'm sure you'll probably agree with me on this, Sam, but if you specialise in recruiting in a particular area, so Sam's background is certainly recruiting around the finance arena, and one of the things that you will find is with a lot of recruitment agencies, if they specialise in that particular area, they may not advertise every single vacancy. So as soon as a vacancy comes in, they'll obviously attract a lot of people. If you've got 3 or 4 similar roles that then come in afterwards, what would be the purpose in then advertising another job, receiving the same amount of applications from the same people? So it may be that there are other vacancies that are not necessarily advertising at this stage. And before we just maybe move on to talking about how you can use groups to look for opportunities as well, you will find as well with recruitment agencies that because they won't necessarily advertise every single type of vacancy, it may be that before they even place an advert out there, they may come to LinkedIn first of all to look for potential candidates rather than actually advertising the vacancy immediately. So it's really important that you do have that online presence there, just on the basis that there may be potential vacancies that aren't necessarily being advertised, because if there are people on LinkedIn that are currently available for work, it saves them a lot of time and effort to advertise a vacancy when they can get some names immediately from LinkedIn as well.
Definitely.
Okay. So I was going to talk to you just very briefly about groups, because that's another way really to look for opportunities. And we've had another question that came in with regards to changing industry and not having a network and how I'm going to meet new people. So I thought it might be worth just talking about groups.
Yeah, definitely. You can go through that if you want.
So with groups, a lot of people don't realise that you can actually join groups on LinkedIn. And if you imagine groups are a great way to introduce you to new people who are very like-minded, they may be in the same industry as you, so there may be potential information that you can get from them with regards to help you moving in the right direction with your career. So it might be that you actually look for groups on LinkedIn that are relevant to the industry that you're currently in. And a great way for you to do that is just to go into the group section on LinkedIn and just start playing around with words, thinking about the types of groups that you would be looking for. So if we just have a look and see what different groups are out there. Okay. Okay, so what we can do is we can look for some specific groups, just using the filter on the left-hand side of all of the different groups that are being advertised with the words Accountant UK on LinkedIn. What you will then see on the actual LinkedIn list of results, it will give you an idea of, first of all, an overview of what type of group forum that would be, how many people are actually in that group, and how many discussions are taking place. It's really important to pay attention to the number of discussions. The first one, we've got 552 discussions. It means it's a very active group. So it's a really good way for people to actually look at your profile. If you're active in these groups, if you're sharing information, if you're sharing articles, if you're engaging with people, they're more likely to actually look at your profile as well. You'll also find a lot of companies actually are within groups. If they're in a profession, there will probably be a member within these groups. It's a really good way to introduce yourself to new people who potentially you may want to work for in the future. But I've actually noticed within quite a lot of groups that I'm a member of, Sam, that actually quite a lot of companies and individuals actually tip off with regards to job opportunities in
very
groups.
very much so. I think what's worth stressing about this, about all of this activity on LinkedIn, and in particular the groups, I think a lot of people, when I'm talking to them about this, their first response is, well, that sounds like a lot of work. It sounds like I need to spend a lot of time on it, and that it's surely there are not a lot of other things that I can be doing for your job search. For my job search. I mean, absolutely, this should be one of lots of different things. However, it doesn't need to be particularly time consuming. So we're not talking about posting 5 comments on discussions 5 times a day. It just needs to be the odd comment once a week, 10 minutes having a look at some of the discussions going on in some of the groups, potentially sharing an article that you think other members of that group might find interesting. So it doesn't have to be much. And actually, now that LinkedIn have developed their apps for their iPads and tablets and phones, it's really quite easy to do now. So it's a lot less time intensive. So it doesn't need to be that you're spending lots of time on doing this. Just a little bit. Absolutely. Each week or a little bit each day makes a really big difference.
And again, back to what we are talking about in today's webinar, is all about networking. So any form of exchange that you're having with anybody, it might be that you're reconnecting with an old colleague, it might be that you're posting information within a forum. That is a form of networking that you are doing. And we do get quite a lot of people, and somebody put a message on earlier saying that they aren't necessarily very confident when it comes to networking. So if maybe this is all quite new to you, you are quite worried about having the confidence to go out and have conversations with people, it might be that online networking might be a really useful tool with you just to build on that confidence.
Definitely. And I mean, that kind of ties in a little bit with the question that's come through from Justin, saying LinkedIn's clearly a networking tool. It makes it easy to send a message, but do you think actually reaching for the telephone is a better route? Or what about one of the techniques that I use is to write into them first and then ask them for a call and then to call them? I would agree, Justin, that it's always better to have a conversation with someone. That would be your ideal goal, is to have either a face-to-face discussion, or if that's not possible, then a telephone discussion. But LinkedIn provides a really easy avenue to make that initial contact. So sometimes you might find if you don't have a direct email address for someone, then you can contact them through LinkedIn with the view that you're trying to connect with them and then get an email address and then you can contact them. Or if you find that actually sending a letter or an email and following up with a phone call and it works well for you and you're quite confident to do that, then absolutely. To be quite honest, a mix of all approaches tends to work, because it just depends very much on the individual that you're trying to make contact with and the relationship you already have with them. So for someone that you know really well, that you've maybe worked with quite recently, then actually it might look a little bit odd if you just contact them through LinkedIn. But if it's someone that you maybe haven't spoken to for quite a long time, then LinkedIn's quite a nice way to reach out. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people ask the question, is LinkedIn like Facebook? Because I'm not on Facebook, because I don't really want to use Facebook. Now Facebook actually is a very good way to network, more socially rather than professionally. However, it may be that socially there are some people that may be able to help you with that next opportunity. Just making sure that you get the balance to keep Both of them obviously completely separate. But yeah, just to touch on what Sam said, it might be that when you've had that initial introduction, it might be that you've emailed them, you've sent your CV speculatively to the organisation, you've done the follow-up phone call, they've said, really love to talk to you, Justin. I just don't have any opportunities at the moment, or you sound like you'd be a really good fit for the company, but over the next 6 months we're not really looking at expanding. A really nice way to finish that conversation would be, I've noticed that you are actually on LinkedIn, Richard, let's just say. So Richard, I've noticed that you're on LinkedIn. It would be great to be connected with you on LinkedIn. Would you be happy for me to send you an invitation request? And then that way you're still in contact with them. So it's really important that when you do make that contact with people, you're networking, you're talking, you do keep in touch. Obviously, you don't want to be a thorn in their side and to be constantly keeping in contact with them. But this is a really useful tool then with LinkedIn. It might be that you are connecting with people that possibly don't know what your background is. They could be a family friend who potentially that you've spoken to over the last 15 years, but they don't really know what you actually do. And then when you're connected with them on LinkedIn on a professional level, they're really surprised by all of your achievements, all of the background that you've got listed on there, and they then may be able to put you in connection with somebody else. And just to finish off on that point, don't forget about your connections, because obviously when you connect with people on LinkedIn, it will also give you access to who they're connected to.
That's a really good point.
So if you are thinking about changing industry, if you are thinking about that next opportunity, it's not just about who you know, it's about your connections and who they know as well.
Definitely. Good. Okay, I'm really conscious of time, and there's a few questions we've got here that we've not had not answered. So there's a couple of people actually that have asked about whether the LinkedIn Premium account is worth it. I'm very much of the opinion, I'm a strong believer in the basic LinkedIn account. I believe that you can still get a lot out of the basic LinkedIn account if you use it properly. I think that you shouldn't think about upgrading until you are sure that you're using it in the right way, so that you're being proactive in contacting people, that you're using it, making sure that you've got the right sort of information on your profile. The instances where I think the LinkedIn Premium account is worth it is where you're trying to contact people that are outside of your network, that are wanting to, that you need to send an email for, which is LinkedIn's messaging system that you have to pay for. So I think don't think about upgrading until you kind of get to that point, really. LinkedIn do offer a free month's trial on Premium, so when you're at that point, it might be worth starting to think about the 3 months trial. But that's my thought on that. And then just before we move on from LinkedIn, there's just one other question that someone has asked about posts as well, as to whether or not it's worth blogging or putting out articles through the post function on LinkedIn. And what we mean by that is, I'll just jump onto my homepage on LinkedIn. So you can see here that you've got an option to publish a post. Now, depending on what you're looking at doing, if you're looking at starting your own business and becoming an expert in your field, or if you're looking at a marketing role, then actually publishing a post and writing a post or an opinion piece from scratch can be a really good way to get yourself seen. It's not going to be relevant for everyone. It depends on actually what you're looking to achieve from LinkedIn. But for those of you who are potentially looking at starting a consultancy business, or looking at demonstrating themselves as an expert in their field, that can be a really, really good way to do that. Good. Okay, so conscious of time, we've got probably about 10 more minutes of questions. So someone's asked a question around networking events, which we've not really touched on yet. So I think that's probably quite good to talk about. So the question that we have around the networking events relates to, which actually is a really common concern. This is a really common concern that people have. When going to a networking event, I struggle to go up to people that I don't know and start a conversation. So actually, how do I get around that? What do I do? What are the sorts of things that I can talk about with people?
Okay, well, I think like anything, if you imagine that the networking event is like an interview, and you won't go to an interview without having prepared and thought about what you want to say and what you want to get across. So if you think about with a networking event, it's a meeting, it's a chance for you to meet with new people. So again, take that networking to one side. You're not there to close deals. You're there basically to exchange conversations, to to meet new people and grow your network of people itself. So it's possibly worth just touching on the term elevator pitch, because that is quite a commonly used phrase when people talk about networking. And basically the notion of the elevator pitch is it's a 20 to 60 second pitch. So if you imagine yourself getting into an elevator, you get into the elevator, you press the button. By the time that you get to the top of the elevator, you should have been able to, whoever's in the elevator, to have a conversation to summarize what you can do, what your offering is, and what's in it for them within that very short time frame. So if you think about with a networking event, the best way for you to build on that confidence and to engage with people is, first of all, to do some preparation. Who's going to be at the networking events? What kind of people do you want to introduce yourself to? So have a bit of a strategic plan. A lot of companies these days, when they're setting up their networking events, will be able to actually produce a delegate list, so you can make sure that you're sat with the people that you'd like to be talking to. Or it might be that you've got an indication of the businesses that are basically going to be there. But think about that statement. What do you want to get across to people? So if you're not necessarily selling a product and it's more about you, the individual, you need to be able to talk about, well, what do you actually do? What do you specialize in? And how are they going to benefit from that? So an elevator pitch would be used at a networking event. It might be a time when you're just walking in the street and you bump into an ex-colleague and they say, Sam, what are you doing at the moment? And you've got that speech really ready, so you've got an overview. So then if for any reason they feel that they can help you move forward with that approach, they'll be able to talk to you. If you are struggling with confidence though, do you know any other professionals that already attend networking events? Why not go as a guest to another networking event where you are somebody's guest, so you can go and have a bit of a practice just to raise that confidence as well?
Definitely. I think that's a really good way to kind of ease yourself into it, really, isn't it? I think the other thing, I mean, the elevator pitch is brilliant, but then obviously what you need to remember is you need to get the conversation going on after that.
Absolutely.
So then it's what it needs to be about. It's not so much just about what you want to tell them. It's remembering that networking and talking and a conversation is a two-way process.
Absolutely.
So it's thinking about demonstrating, well, a genuine interest in that person. Someone is more likely to remember you if you ask them lots of questions about themselves and that you genuinely listen to the answers. So it's asking them about what they do. What does that involve? Questions around their business. Do they enjoy it? And just generally using that as a way to spark up conversation. That way you'll be able to have a longer conversation with someone and they're more likely to remember you. And then at the end of that conversation, you'll say, well, I'll look you up on LinkedIn. Then do you mind if I look you up on LinkedIn? I'll send you a connection request after this. And then go away and make a note of their name so you remember what it is and what their name is after you've met with them. And then after the event, which is really important, this is something that a lot of people forget to do, is follow it up. Follow it up with an invitation to connect on LinkedIn. Just say, really nice to meet with you, had a really interesting discussion, great to hear about what you do. And then if there's anything that you think that you can get back from that, at that point you can do that.
I also noticed we had on one of the previous set of questions that came in that people were unsure, what do I take to a networking event? What do I wear to a networking event? So, as mentioned before, treat it like an interview. First impressions count. Go there looking smart, looking professional. It depends what your business is. If it's your own business that you're promoting, it may be that you've actually got a business card. If you're maybe looking at doing some consultancy work and you have a functional CV which has got an overview of all of your different areas of expertise and how you can help their business, it may be that you're taking a CV with you as well. It doesn't really matter. It's that lasting impression. And like Sam said, it's very much about a two-way conversation, making sure that people remember you. I suppose the easiest way to just describe it, because a lot of people are still with networking unsure, if you ever think about at a time when you need something or a service, where do you look for that? So for example, if I was looking for a hairdresser, I'd probably first of all ask for a recommendation from somebody, or secondly, maybe look in the yellow pages or see whether there was something in the local paper advertising a local hairdressers to me. And it's the same with you. If you are looking for thinking about who can you reach out to, or how will people know about me. Think about, well, how will people find you? Will they find you on LinkedIn? If it's your own business that you're trying to promote as well, how will people find you? And it might be that a lot of that is going to be through word of mouth and recommendation. So that's why networking is really important, because they may not need your services now, but you want them to think about you in the future.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the other thing to remember with networking. It's sometimes you can get really lucky and it pays off very quickly.
Yeah.
Other times it's that it might take a little bit longer, but in order to get that process moving, you need to start having conversations with people. Now, I am conscious that we have just about run out of time. We've had there's quite a few other questions that have come through that we've not had a chance to answer. So what I will do for those that we haven't answered is, as I said, we hope to make those questions or summarised versions potentially of those questions, given that some people's questions are quite specific to their own situation. We'll make the answers to those available on the website. But actually, just before we go, there's one last question that I really want to answer, because I think you're particularly well placed to answer this, given your specialism in terms of a lot of the people that you support. So there's a question here around working part-time. So you deal with a lot of mums returning to work, don't you?
Yeah, we do. And if again, obviously you've come through from CABA, we do get so many people that actually take some form of career break from actually having children, returning back to work and looking for work, which gives you that flexible offering. It may be that lots of part-time jobs aren't actually being advertised. So for part-time work specifically, accessing the hidden job market is really important. One of the things that we slightly touched on earlier, which I'll just talk to you in a little bit more detail about now, is actually targeting organisations. So one of the things that you may want to do is think about which companies would you actually like to work for, and start thinking about drawing up a list of companies in and around your local area. If you are restricted to location based on the hours that you're looking to work, what better way than to identify which companies are in those in those areas? Are they in business centres? Are they on industrial estates? Where are they? And make sure that you actually think about, okay, getting your CV over to them with a speculative letter. Now, a speculative letter basically is an introduction. You're writing to them because you're interested in their company, because this is what they do. You've enclosed a copy of your CV, and you would welcome the opportunity to meet with them. A lot of part-time work is generally found through people knowing people and people having conversations and people recommending people for pieces of work. So if you are finding that a lot of part-time jobs aren't necessarily being advertised at the moment, it might be worth thinking about marketing yourself with your CV and cover letter to the organisations that you're interested in. This doesn't just go for part-time workers, it goes for full-time workers as well. So it's really important to think about that. And just really on that kind of lasting note with regards to looking for part-time work, we've had so many success stories here at Renovo about people who have secured work through the hidden job market. I know most recently Samantha had a mum that she was working with who was in the process of returning back to work, and she was at the school gates and she was talking to another mum, and the other mum was actually just about to set up her own organisation, but she was in the process of putting together a website, and that actually wasn't her background. So she was just talking to this other mum saying, this is what I'm doing at the moment. And the lady that was looking for work, that's what her background was. It was all about marketing and it was all about web design. So as a result of a conversation at the school gates, she actually resulted in securing some contract work. We get lots of people with these fantastic success stories from talking to people in church. It may be a conversation with somebody that they've had at their local sports club. We've had parents who have been coaching football teams that have been talking to other parents. Any form of conversation, it can be anywhere. It doesn't have to be in the workplace. It can be outside of work. Any conversation that you have is a networking opportunity.
Definitely. Good. Okay, unfortunately, that is all the time we have in terms of questions. I am just going to launch a poll on your screen now, just asking if you have found today's session useful. So if you could answer that for me, that would be fantastic. But just while you're doing that, I just want to mention, as part of CABA's LifeWorks campaign that we're doing this week, we do still have, and you may have read about this, but there is limited opportunities available to have a free CV review review by us at Renovo, or an introduction to career coaching session with one of our coaches, including myself and Louise potentially. There are still limited spaces available for those. So if you are interested in that, then please make sure that you get in touch with CABA, and they can have a chat to you about whether you're eligible for that, and give you a little bit more detail as to what that would involve. What is also worth mentioning is potentially, if you are eligible for that, then you may also be eligible for a free sort of full coaching program from us. So I touched a little bit before at the start of the presentation about what we do as an organisation and the support that we provide. So the support that we provide through CABA is unlimited access to a personal career coach available by telephone, email and Skype for 3 months, and the support that the coach would provide would be very bespoke around your own individual needs. So I'm well aware that today, some of the advice that we've given has been a little bit general, because obviously we're targeting towards lots of different people. So if you want to have a chat to a coach about your specific situation and you're eligible for the coaching program, then actually that might be really useful to do so. As well as that, or to support that, you also get access to our brilliant career management portal Workfriend, which has lots of really useful tools and resources on it in relation to your job search. So if I just close off the results of that poll now, and if I share them with you, you should hopefully see that everyone has found today's session useful, but for a lot of people there are still some areas that they would like to cover. So there are some things that we haven't covered that you feel that you'll benefit from coaching support. Then please make sure that you get in touch with CABA to have a chat about whether you're eligible for that support, or in particular the free CV review. So we've had a lot of interest in that so far, which has been brilliant, but there are still some limited spaces available. It's worth mentioning that if you are eligible for the support through CABA, the coaching program would be free for yourself. Okay, so I think that's all we had to cover. Is there anything else that you wanted to add to that at all, Louise? Or
no, absolutely. I think Sam's just really reinforced that obviously this is a service that is paid for by CABA for you. So if you feel that you would benefit from actually taking up that support, this would be something that wouldn't cost you. Obviously, if you were eligible, this would be funded by CABA.
Yeah, brilliant. Good. Well, thank you very much for attending, everyone. It's been really good. Yeah. Really enjoyed it.
Really good questions.
Absolutely. So as I said before, for those whose questions we haven't answered, we hope to get those up on the website over the coming week with answers for those. And we do also really hope that the session has been recorded. So provided there are no technical problems, there will also be a recorded version of the session hopefully available as well. But thank you very much for attending.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Bye.